you ever get your images back and wish that they'd come out a lot sharper? Well, I'm going to share with you some of my tips to make sure that you get sharp images every time. Welcome back to the vlog. So my first tip is to put the camera on a tripod. It really does help to stabilize the camera, give you some support. And if you can avoid it, don't use the center column. I mean, the whole point of a tripod is you've got three legs which are giving you that support. And as soon as you put it up on a center column, then obviously what happens is that you're reverting back to one leg. So good solid tripod. Make sure it's on a good solid surface too. If you're putting your tripod on in water or if you're putting it on moss, every movement is going to send a vibration up through your camera and up through the tripod. I've often found when I'm shooting in woodland that I've had to put my tripod on mossy areas, and when you walk, you get that movement, and often that can cause a few problems with some sharp images. So tip number one, sturdy tripod on a sturdy surface. My second tip is to try and avoid using the shutter button on the camera if you can, because as soon as you push that shutter button, you're slightly moving the camera. So what I'd recommend is either putting it on a timer, say around sort of 5 seconds, or like I'm doing, use a remote. This is a great little gadget that I can keep attached to the camera all the time, and the receiver's powered by the camera. So I've got no cables, there's no movement, and I can be quite far away from the actual camera to take my shots if I need to be. I'm finding it really difficult to get into a good position for compositions here. The water around me is incredibly deep. So even rolling up the trouser legs and getting in is going to, I'd be up to my neck. So it's difficult positioning yourself. But I've come across this scene where the water cascades down through the rocks. And the water's got a lovely green colour to it. I'm getting some of that reflection from the pines that are around me are reflecting off into the water, and it's really clear. But what I really like is the textures in the rock, giving these patterns that cascade down through. I'll show you on the back of the camera. You can see, I mean, compositionally wise, I don't know how this is going to work perhaps until I see it back on the camera. I like something that leads me into an image that draws the eye through. And what's happening here is we've got the water coming in from the left-hand side and cascading off onto the right-hand corner, but you can't see where it's really going. We've got these nice rocks which are taking the eye off into the water, but then it kind of stops. So I think image-wise it's going to look nice. There's going to be some nice colours, there's going to be some nice patterns, but I think it's going to fall flat on the composition. But anyway, I'm here. Let's take the shots. We'll have a look at them when we get back on the computer. My next tip is to try some various different shutter speeds with different lenses to see which gives you the sharpest results. If you're shooting on a long lens, any movement is going to really be picked up, and the opposite on a shorter lens. And if we're photographing in water, if there's a slight breeze, then obviously a quick shutter speed is going to really stop picking up any movement within the actual camera. As opposed to a shorter lens, you're not really going to need to worry quite so much. So experiment with those shutter speeds and see which results, when you get back, give you that cleanest, sharpest image. My next tip should probably be, don't fall in while you're taking the shot. It probably makes epic YouTube video content, but from the perspective of a photographer, it really isn't going to help the image quality. But my next tip is actually remove things like camera straps and lens hoods if you don't need them from the camera, because it's surprising when on a windy day, when your camera strap's flapping around, it can cause a bit of vibration through the camera. So what you don't need, remove. Same with the lens hood. It can catch the wind on a slightly breezy day, which again can cause some shake. I'm just waiting for a bit of that light to go behind my trees here, because I'm getting a little bit too much reflection off the water. But hopefully it won't take too long. I'm really enjoying this light that's coming through here. We're getting some reflections coming down from the pines, which are reflecting back off of the water. And I mean, so surprised at how clear that water is. You can see right through down to the bottom. And yeah, it's a stunning location. So I've gotten myself into another position where I really can't get any further. So it's really making it tricky on those compositions, but I'm really enjoying being here, so I can't complain. I'll show you what I'm looking at on the back of the camera. I'm on my 17 to 35 millimeter lens. And you can see what I've done is I've caught some of this rock in the foreground of my image with the water cascading over it. And then you can see right in the back there of my image, in the background, that light is just touching those trees. We're just getting that lovely bright colour coming down from those leaves. So I'm probably going to have to bracket this one and have a look when I get back. There's quite a lot of highlights coming down through the centre of the water there, but I do like the light. So anyway, I'll take a few shots, and if it comes out any good, here it is. So you might ask, why not just shoot everything at f/22? Narrow aperture, everything's nice and sharp. But what happens is when we get to the very narrow apertures on our lenses, we get something which is called diffraction, and we start losing that sharpness within our images. Every lens has an aperture where it's at its optimum sharpness, and you can look in the technical specifications of your lens to see what that is. But usually it's around about the f/8, which is why, as a rule of thumb, if you shoot at f/8 on most lenses, that's the point that you're going to get your sharpest image. And what we often do is we often focus stack our images so that we don't have to go all the way up to very small apertures, and as well as making sure that our images are nice and sharp all the way through. Sometimes it's worth taking multiple shots, focusing at different points just to be on the safe side. And of course, sometimes we want to be a little bit creative. We might want a soft, slightly out of focus foreground. We might want a slightly soft, out of focus background. Another useful tip is not to go too high on the ISO. What happens is when we go too high on the ISO, we get grain that starts to come into our shadow areas, and that grain can soften our images. So, you know, if you can shoot on ISOs of around 100, 200, 300, then you're going to get sharper images. ISO doesn't necessarily affect the sharpness of our images, but that grain will really give them a soft feel. And my final tip is to make sure that you're photographing in good light. Good light can give you good contrasts in your images, and it's those contrasts that give an image that sharp feel. When you've got strong contrasts between colors and shapes and tones, that can really give your image some punch and give it that sharpness that you're looking for. So I really hope there's some tips there that you can take away, and the next time you're out you can come back with lovely sharp images. I haven't covered focusing in this episode, but that's going to take a whole video in its own, so we'll do that at another time. But what a great location. Thanks so much for joining me in this episode. If you have enjoyed it, click the subscribe and notification button. If you've got any handy tips, leave me a comment below. It's always great to hear from you. And well, I can't wait to see where we end up in the next vlog, and I look forward to seeing you.